What's the stinkiest thing you guys have ever smelled? Had a customer bring money into the bank that had been found on a decomposing body. Long story. Human decomp is a different kind of stink, and it's still the worst stink I've smelled. When I was a teenager, my dad asked me to remove a dead cat from the iron roof of his business during an Australian summer. It was already pretty foul, but when I grabbed its tail to lift it up, the tail pulled right off, and some of the spine came with it, which opened a passage causing its bowels and feces to spill out and sizzle on the hot metal. Fortunately, I directed my vomit into the rubbish bag I was holding. Worked at a video game store once. 2 stores down was a seafood restaurant. One day I arrived at work, stepped out of my car, and almost threw up immediately. Got inside where it really wasn't much better despite the numerous candles being burned and ozone being sprayed. Turns out the seafood restaurant had closed, had the power cut off, and had left a bunch of shrimp unrefrigerated and rotting inside the closed building. I was told it was 600 pounds, but I have no idea where that number came from or if it is even accurate. To this day, I have never smelled anything that came remotely close to that. Tonsil stones. They aren't the worst, but I find it so disgusting. Rotten potatoes. In high school, I had a friend whose family owned a very large chicken farm. You do not want to be downwind of a chicken farm. Cancer rot from a festering bladder tumor that created so much mucus it would clog all their catheters and leak. Smelled like a bunch of used cigarettes that were left sitting out in sun in a bowl of water for a month mixed with decaying tissue. The smell was so pungent and strong it would travel down the hall and stop my breathing for a second when I walked in the room, kind of like what happens when you jump into freezing cold water. Sea lion breath. We were at the zoo and one of them exhaled right in my face. The perfect, rancid mixture of wet dog, rotten fish, and musty, unclean storage room. It was vile. 2 things on the farm. Factory farm chicken coop, rotting soybeans. Burning human flesh. Y'all never forget the smell. A boil on my butt that a doctor had just lanced. Awful. I'm an electrician. Early in my career, I was an apprentice working in a bioresearch lab retrofitting the fire alarm system. We had to enter and leave through the loading dock. They stored big 50-gallon drums of bio-waste in the loading dock to periodically ship out for disposal. One day someone had backed a truck into the drums and spilled them all over the loading dock. You could smell it from a block away. We couldn't even approach the building. 15 years later, and I can still feel the smell in the back of my throat when I think about it. I worked in restaurants for years. You have these camber Tupperware containers all over the place. My friend was cleaning out a reach-in and finds one in the back. The containers are this white opaque color, so you can sort of see what's in it, and since you're in and out of the reach-in all day long, you know what's in there. But this one we couldn't tell. My friend lifts up a corner and instead of looking, puts it up to his nose. Now I've heard the expression turning green before, but as God is my witness, I saw all the color drain from his face and he had this pale light green shade for a moment. It was amazing. We still don't know what the fuck that was. I used to work in histology and cutting up sebaceous cysts was the worst. The smell was so awful. Death. Unfortunately, when people pass away due to certain things, the body breaks down. Yup, it stinks. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. Unfortunately, in order to earn that degree, I had to pass a zoology lab course. Most of the lab was fine, but one day when we came in, the lab smelled terrible. Old seafood, formaldehyde, and something unique I couldn't place. Turned out we were dissecting fetal sharks. I didn't know about the smell lingering. I don't know if it's an oil or something in the shark or the interplay between the carcass and the preserving chemicals, but the smell permeated my being. My hands through the gloves, my clothes, my hair all had this scent, but I didn't know it until my now ex-wife informed me, and then, rightfully, had nothing to do with me until the smell went away. My hands smelled for a week. My dog, after having been sprayed by a skunk at point-blank range, just before I let him back in the house. My dog was in my living room for 30 seconds before I got him back outside. I could smell skunk on the shirts hanging in my bedroom closet down the hall. I could smell it in my house for months. It's a toss-up between rotten milk vomit from a kid, or the main from a wastewater treatment plant, the massive pipe where all the unfiltered raw sewage pours in. Worms left in trunk after fishing.